Looks like we're good to go. Thank you all for being here tonight. This is the League of Women Voters of the Red River Valley District 16 Candidate Forum for 2024. My name is Barb Hedrick. I am your moderator this evening. I am joined by volunteers Marlene, Mary, Randy, Tiffany, our election candidate forum coordinator, and Judy. And we thank them all for being here. All right. This forum will be streamed live and recorded for playback from the City of Fargo's Government Community Access channel, and also posted on our website and Facebook page. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. If you'd like to learn more about us, please visit our website or Facebook page, or see the brochures back in the hallway. We would particularly want to thank the City of Fargo for providing the space and technical assistance for this evening's event, and we are grateful for all of their help as well. I want to take a moment to highlight what's on my t-shirt, which is our vote411.org voter guide for candidates across the state of North Dakota. You can find your entire ballot on Vote 411. You just enter your address. I thank all the candidates who filled out the questions, and if there are anyone here that has not yet, I encourage you to still do so. You can email nodaclwv at Gmail, and we will send you the link again to get that done. We will be doing questions from the audience here tonight, questions that have been submitted on the internet as well. We will be also doing opening and closing statements. Each candidate will be given 2 minutes for an opening statement. Everyone will have 1 minute to answer the question, and 2 minutes for a closing statement. Randy is your timer, and she has a little bell that you don't want to hear too often. We do screen the questions for clarity and redundancy, but we will try to get to them as many as possible. We thank everybody in the room for their courteousness and their participation in this process tonight. We do have a couple of candidates who could not be here tonight, Phil Wise and Julie West, who did submit statements, and we are willing to read these statements. I will read Phil Wise's statement first. Hello, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to be here, and thanks to the League of Women Voters for their commitment to our elections and to our democracy. I would love to be there in person, but I'm working in Virginia scanning hearts for the next few weeks. Then I'll be back in West Fargo and campaigning in person. For those who don't know me, I'm Phil Weiss, and I'm running for you to work for you in Bismarck this January, representing your best interest. Here's why I am running. West Fargo has so much going for it, great schools, jobs, and economic growth, but we are also experiencing growing pains. Property taxes, child care needs, more housing options. We need to address all these items to keep West Fargo and North Dakota a great place to live in the coming years. Because I work in healthcare, I see up close the gaps in both access and affordability of healthcare. In particular, we need to help families who don't have access to adequate healthcare insurance or services. We also need to quit interfering in healthcare decisions, especially decisions that only women, families, and their doctors should be making without interference from the government. School funding and property taxes are another issue I'm excited about, because there are solutions. To start, we should consider increasing state funding for schools to help take the property tax burden off local communities. Let me be clear, in no way should public dollars go to private schools. Quality public education should be our focus. Again, we need to work together to solve these issues. The current representatives in District 16 do not represent me or the values of the people living here. They voted against education, against school lunches, against reproductive rights, and against child care assistance. They also voted for book bans. That's why I'm running, because we can do so much better in West Fargo. A little background. I'm a Fargo South grad, have a bachelor's degree from MSUM in communications and a bachelor's degree from NDSU in psychology. I continued my education in cardiac sonography and have worked in numerous healthcare systems. Here's what you can expect from me. I will work incredibly hard both to get elected and to represent you once I'm in the legislature. I will always be accessible and accountable to everyone in District 16, and I'll fight for the democratic values we all care about. Together with Julie and Heather, we have a winning team, and with your help, we'll flip District 16. Please be sure to vote. Many thanks for your time and for your support. This is the statement from Julie West. Good evening, I'm Julie West, and although I'm able to be with you tonight, I want to express my gratitude to the League of Women Voters for organizing this forum and for your unwavering dedication to remote civic engagement and informed decision-making. As a firefighter, community advocate, and mother of three, I'm running for the North Dakota House of Representatives because I believe together we can build a future where every family has the opportunity to thrive, from ensuring affordable housing and strengthening unions to providing access to quality, affordable childcare. My commitment is to the well-being of all North Dakotans. One issue I feel particularly passionate about is making sure our children are fed. We have the ability to ensure that every child in our state has access to nutritious school meals. This is not just about addressing hunger, it's about giving our kids the foundation they need to succeed in school and in life. Feeding our children is an investment in the future, and it's something we can achieve if we work together. We're also facing significant challenges when it comes to reproductive health. I will fight to protect the rights of individuals to make their own healthcare decisions free from political interference. At the same time, we must protect our children's freedom to learn. The rise of book bans is alarming and must be stopped. Education should open minds, not close them off. Our schools should be places where diverse perspectives are celebrated, not censored. In today's political climate, it can feel like we are more divided than ever. But I believe in bipartisanship. I believe that by focusing on the issues that unite us, we can rise above the noise and create real solutions that benefit all of us. Divisive rhetoric and partisan games only hold us back. I am committed to bringing people together across party lines to address the real challenges we face. My campaign is grounded in hope that by working together we can build a North Dakota where everyone is supported, where differences are respected, and where government works for the people. I know the importance of collaboration and teamwork, values, which I will bring to the legislature as your representative. Though I am not able to be here tonight, I am always here to listen to your concerns and work on your behalf. Let's come together, reject the politics of division, and create a future where all North Dakotans can thrive. Thank you for your time tonight, for your commitment to our community, and for considering me as your representative. Together, we can build a brighter, more hopeful future for North Dakota. I appreciate the opportunity to earn your support. So we will begin now with opening statements. David, you can go first.
First of all, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters for the invitation. I think it's a privilege to come out and actually visit face-to-face with the people of our district. My name is Dave Clemens. I serve in the Senate representing District 16, married to my wife Jody, 4 children and 7 grandchildren, and we do reside in West Fargo. In the legislature, I have and am serving as chair of the Transportation Committee. I serve on the Human Services Committee. On the interim between sessions, I serve on the Judiciary Committee, and on the another committee is the Audit Committee, which is made up of going over the reports of the state auditor. I also serve on a task force for the prevention of child sexual abuse. And I guess just quickly, I'd like to address a few items that have come up. First of all, I have never voted for a book ban in our libraries. The books that were inappropriate for young children were to be placed in other areas not accessible to young children. Nothing about a book ban. On school lunches, there was a bill that was going to expand the school lunch program. Initially, it was to give it to everyone. We did vote against that, but that hasn't been mentioned is that we also passed a bill, which we voted for, that said no child can be denied school lunches in the school. And so and my last part of my statement is that a large priority of mine is to protect our young children. They are being attacked by so many different areas, and it's not appropriate for that age limit.
Thank you. Heather?
Hi, everyone. My name is Heather Tulandine, and I am the District 16 Dem NPL Senate candidate. I have a degree in bachelor's in political science and human development family science, as well as a master's in higher education administration, both from North Dakota State University. Roll Herd. And then as far as my priorities in this upcoming legislative session, I want to focus a lot on food insecurity, education reform, and our workforce needs. And these kind of get broken out into food insecurity. We really need to make statewide efforts to coordinate the initiatives that are happening at the local level. Our local communities don't have the resources to take care of the problem fully, particularly in rural communities where there are less people and less money to go around. So we need to coordinate that at a statewide level. We also need to provide those free school lunches. Senator Clemens mentions HB 1492, the anti-lunch shaming bill. Zach Ista was the main sponsor of that, but I'd like to take partial credit for that passing because I was the student who testified on their experience with lunch shaming. And a lot of senators and representatives told me afterwards how impactful my statement was to them in their passing decision. As far as workforce initiatives, we need to fund childcare investments so that people can participate in the workforce. We also need to make sure that there is adequate housing, adequate worker protections, and we need to continue investing in vocational programs and apprenticeship programs so that people have the ability to join in on the jobs that they want to pursue. But we also can't ignore the value that a traditional four-year degree does offer to many people. And finally, as far as education, I believe that public dollars belong in public schools, and I believe that we need to protect the interests of all children. My mission can be summed up with doing the most good for the most amount of people possible, regardless of party affiliation. I'm not afraid to work across the line and do the things that need to be done.
Thank you. Ben?
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you to the League and the City of West Fargo for hosting us tonight. I'm Ben Koppelman, and I've had the privilege of representing the District 16 residents for 12 years. And I'm running for re-election again, and let me tell you why. Like you all, I'm a business owner and I'm a family man. My wife and I have resided in District 16 or West Fargo for the majority of our life. And we have a daughter and son-in-law and now a grandchild that live in our district. And my son as well lives in our district. And why do we stay here? It's because we believe in living in the context of a good family place to live, just like you all want. We don't go out to Bismarck and pass laws and bills that ruin that, just to come home and wallow in that ruin. We pass bills that are good policy that we want to apply to our kids. I want to thank the other members that have taken the time away from work and made a priority to speak to you tonight by being here tonight. I think it's important. How can you be a legislator if you don't show up? You have to show up. So on issues, things that are important to me when I'm in Bismarck are constitutional rights, things like fair voting, things like free speech, things like the Second Amendment, things that are pro-family, like protecting children of all ages and all stages of development, things that are respectful to old people, trying to find solutions to tough issues like homelessness and childcare while still respecting your freedom. I believe the tax climate is great in our state. However, we've got to fix property tax, and that's a huge priority for me. I have a plan for that, and hopefully there will be questions tonight to speak about that. But again, thank you for taking the time to watch this. Thank you for those of you that are here in person, and I look forward to the questions.
Thank you. Andrew?
First, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters and those that are here this evening. I'm Andrew Marshall. I represent District 16 in the House. I sit on the Education Policy Committee, both during session and during the interim. I also sit on the Energy and Natural Resources Committee during session, and during the interim, I'm on the Rules Committee. One of my things about is our kids. One of my degrees is I have a degree in bachelor's degree in occupational education from Wayland Baptist University in Wichita Falls, Texas. I got that while I was in the service. My thing is for the VOTEC career fields, and making sure that we have the access and the schooling for the VOTEC careers. It's very important that we bring up people to fill the VOTEC career fields, whether it's electricians, plumbers, carpenters, and that. I'm also an advocate for school choice. It's very important. We have some really good schools here in North Dakota and in West Fargo. It's just that it's not for everybody. Some kids need certain environment in order to grow, and that the schools do not provide. And as a state, we are responsible for the education of those children. And that's why I think the state should be able to,
Sorry, Andrew.
thank you.
All right, we'll start the questions now, and we move down each time as for new questions. So Heather, we start with you for this first question. As District 16 continues to grow, what are your plans to improve transportation infrastructure, including roads and public transit options, to meet the needs of residents?
I think that's a fair question. One of the things that Fargo is facing right now is their issues with the Metro bus. And there are a few routes that do extend into West Fargo. And while that's fantastic, we need to continue expanding those routes as we expand how far out our city spreads. We're kind of a narrow slot on the map, but that doesn't mean that there aren't a lot of neighborhoods, businesses, and schools that kind of filter in within that arena. And we need to make sure that people are able to adequately access things, as well as continuing to ensure that our sidewalks are safe and passable, and that our traffic stops allow for that safe passage. There's a lot that can be done, but we need to share that financial burden of the Metro bus system and really increasing that functioning with Fargo. And unfortunately, as much as people hate it, taxes do play a role in how we're able to maintain our infrastructure. So we cannot afford to get rid of taxes completely, or our roads will crumble and there will be nothing to replace it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ben?
Well, serving on the Transportation Committee this session, I've got quite a bit of experience in dealing with roads and bridges and the needs of both those in the city and in the townships and the counties. And I think the state has done a great job in coming alongside those cities, providing funds such as through the Prairie Dog funding bill and the distribution process through the DOT and fuel taxes. I think cities need to make the decisions of how they prioritize, how they spend that. We all want good roads in West Fargo, and I hope you'll all join me in telling our city commissioners we want good roads. But that's their role. Our role is to just be their partner. I do believe the state roads that do come through the city of West Fargo and District 16 are maintained well, and I'll definitely continue that in my next term.
Thank you. Andrew?
Thank you for the question.
The question was, as District 16 continues to grow, what are your plans to improve transportation infrastructure, including roads and public transit options, to meet the needs of residents?
Well, I'll go ahead and support measures to make sure that the roads and bridges that are part of the state infrastructure will continue to be funded going in the future. Like my predecessor said, that the cities and the counties need to prioritize their needs, and so far everything's been going pretty well, and that's what I plan on doing.
Thank you. David?
As a member of the Transportation Committee, I would also be very interested in seeing that more funds are coming to the eastern part of the state. There has been some moves in the recent sessions to help fund county, township, city roads and bridges in relation to what has been funded out in the western part of the state. The western part of the state has had a large influx of money due to the oil production, but the eastern part of the state does need some more help. And so I know I was just looking at some numbers over like the last 10 years, and actually transportation has had a reduction in funding spending over the years compared to some of the other services. And I think for the city of Fargo, West Fargo, as was mentioned, they need to prioritize things. Event centers may not be or should not be a priority over our streets and roads.
Thank you. For the next question, we will start with Ben. I'm combining two questions here. Should taxpayers pay for private school vouchers, or do you believe that public dollars should be held exclusively for public schools?
Well, first thing I should say is the term public dollars, we have to know what that means. Where does that money come from? And it's you, the taxpayers. It's your money. And so as you pay your taxes into the state, to your school district, to your city, you deserve to tell them how you want to spend that. And when it comes to your kids, you, the parents, know what's best. And so I believe that you should have the opportunity to have great public schools. I think you should also have the opportunity to choose private school. And I don't believe you should have to pay for school twice. So if you believe that what's best for your child is to go to a private school, that they can do the best job, I think you should be able to. But I do not believe we should take money away from the public schools to do so. And I believe we've had several bills, at least one in the last 2 sessions, that have proposed to take new dollars, return them to the taxpayer in some form so that they can choose private education. And those bills have not taken a nickel away from the public schools.
Thank you. Andrew?
Thank you. We've looked at the school funding for private schools and the education department for the last 4 sessions that I've been there. At no time was public dollars being taken away or proposed to be taken away from public schools. You gotta understand, public schools are funded from local taxes, tax levied, and from the state, school aid from the state. The school aid that comes in from the state is based on per pupil. And if that child is not going to that school, then that school does not get that money. But the schools can still levy the tax dollars. And so when it comes to the schools, it's not taking away anything from the schools. Thank you.
David?
I also favor school choice. I believe that parents should have the opportunity to place their children in private schools. And as was mentioned, if they do not receive any assistance towards that, or like a waiver, then they are paying twice. They're paying for the private education of their children, and they're also paying for the public school system. Even though if they send a child to the private school, they're still continuing to pay in to the public school system. And so there was a challenge a number of years ago contesting the constitutionality of private schools and state funding, and or like a waiver. And that Supreme Court decision ruled in favor of private school, that there is no issue by having waivers presented for private school.
Thank you. Heather?
So I think it's first important to point out that there is no way to know where every single cent of your tax dollars went. I cannot say Heather Tulandine's tax dollars went here, here, and here. They all go into a giant pot. It works the same way with car insurance, health insurance. It all goes into one big pile, and then we figure out how to divvy it out from there. So if you want, you can tell yourself that all of your money went to the fire department, or it went to the roads, or it went to the law enforcement. You don't have to think of it as paying for school twice, because you get to decide where you think your money went. In addition, we need to make sure that we're clear about the fact that private schools do not have to accept students with disabilities, and they do not have to provide special education funding or programming for those students. Additionally, this program benefits 13 schools in the state of North Dakota. That's it. Handful of schools. So while we're saying this is about school choice, what we're really saying is this is about school choice for the few who are lucky enough to live in a metro and can afford what their tax money won't cover.
Thank you. You will not be surprised that we've got multiple questions related to property taxes. So again, I'm combining here. Do you support Measure 4 that would eliminate property taxes as a solution for the property tax issue? And if not, please tell us what you think is the solution for property taxes in North Dakota. And I believe, Ben, you get to start. Or no, Andrew gets to start, sorry.
Measure 4. I'm kind of on the fence when it comes to Measure 4. For many sessions now, different legislators have proposed changes for the property taxes to try to alleviate some of the property taxes, the burdens. The cities, the counties, municipalities have come to the legislature and lobbied against them. Said, oh, it won't work. It won't work. And I'm really disheartened when it comes to, I mean, some of the proposals that came out were really good proposals. And so it wouldn't surprise me if it does pass. It would make us work hard to try to figure out how to fund everything. But on the other hand,
Sorry. David?
On the property tax, I can't support Measure 4 entirely the way it's written. I totally support a reduction or even elimination of residential property tax. But if we want to look at some numbers, the state of North Dakota has about a projected $19 billion budget for the coming session. 7 of that is federal. The remaining 12 is from the general fund and special funds. And if we're going to take $2.5 to $3 billion to cover property tax elimination, the state is going to have to really work to find where these areas are going to be cut. And I can imagine how everybody that's wanting all these services that are being offered, severe cuts would have to be coming to some of those areas.
Thank you. Heather?
So our gubernatorial candidate from the Dem NPL side, Merrill Pepcorn, actually has a great proposal. First and foremost, he wants to get rid of property tax for seniors who meet a certain low income threshold. In addition, he'd like to use the interest from the legacy fund to pay for that public school infrastructure so that public school mill levies are able to be used in other ways and the public schools can kind of restructure where they are spending their money. And he wants to make permanent the $500 homesteader tax credit that currently exists. And I think it's important that we consider proposals like that where we don't eliminate it entirely because we can't afford to lose all of that money and to have to cut all of those services off. But we do need to be open to options that help people afford homes, afford to stay in their homes, and maybe even afford to upgrade from time to time, because that's how we keep houses on the market and we keep families upgrading. In order to settle down, you need a place to live, and that's what it takes.
Ben?
Yeah, I believe that we have to address property tax. I'm not sure that Measure 4 would be the way I would do it. I've got a legislative proposal that would actually reform the system for the first time in the period I've been in the legislature. And that would get rid of the common valuation problem, which a lot of people believe is the nature of their tax increases, would replace it with a square footage model and would give every primary resident taxpayer about a 75% reduction in their property taxes without eliminating property taxes. And we would not discriminate based on age, disability, or your financial means, because everybody that's a North Dakota resident, primary resident, deserves that tax relief. The cost of that proposal is about $550 to $600 million. We can cover most of that with earnings off of the legacy fund, as opposed to Measure 4 costing about $3.1 billion. I believe that's the starting point to true tax reform.
Thank you. Next question, we're going to ask something a bit different about your accessibility to constituents if you were elected. David, we start with you. How will you stay accessible to your constituents and ensure their concerns are represented? What strategies will you use to engage the community and maintain transparency?
Well, we always encourage that people attend events like this. And it's maybe a little disappointing when there isn't a large number of people that do come. We also are very open in the North Dakota legislature. Every bill receives a hearing. The public is always welcome to attend those. Emails, phone calls, and as far as transparency, we do have an ethics committee now that has been in existence for a few years, and they are working to look at the activities of different legislators and how their actions are being formulated in the legislature, and that transparency becomes more open and available to the public.
Thank you. Heather?
Well, having grown up in the age of technology, I am very familiar with social media and platforms like that. I've also used my email for jobs before. I worked on NDSU's campus and residence life, and I needed to be accessible by email at really any time of day unless I was sleeping or in class. So I'm used to needing to be on call and be responsive to people when they reach out to me with questions or concerns, and I have no problem with responding as promptly as I can. I usually ask for 24 hours, just as a courtesy. And being able to post on social media platforms, I'm actually currently on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, because I believe in reaching people where they are and reaching out to our younger generation. I mean, Gen Z and Gen Alpha are already on social media platforms, and we need to make sure that we're continuing to bring them into the fold. And as far as transparency, I'm always willing to ask questions about or answer questions about my stances, my policies, my votes, everything of that nature. I'm honest and upfront about it.
Thank you. Ben?
Well, just this week, I've probably spent 2.5 hours on my cell phone talking to constituents. And that's been the case since my entire legislative career. My cell phone's publicly published. People are welcome to call it and talk with me about issues. And I'm certainly willing to dig in on issues that they may have a point of view that I don't agree with. But if they're my constituent, I will see how I can help them. And I believe that's how we should all be. I think that's the true connection we should have with our constituents. And I believe that as far as transparency goes, what's more transparent than being accessible? Now, I know the Ethics Commission was created. They certainly track where our campaign funding comes from donors over $200. They have those reports available. But at the end of the day, both Republicans and Democrats alike that I know in Bismarck are not swayed or selling their vote to a donor. The way they should be graded is how accessible they are to their constituent and how much respect they offer in return.
Thank you. Andrew?
Now, in the age of technology, one of my first degrees I went for was computer science and computer programming. I've dealt with computers my entire adult life with emails, and I'm currently on Facebook. Anybody can reach out and get a hold of me at any time. I'm open book. I'll go ahead and answer people's questions. Whether you go through the state, you can go through the state, and then they'll get transferred to my state email. My contact information is printed. You can find me on Facebook. I'm not on TikTok or some of these other medias. I'm primarily on Facebook. So if anybody has any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Thank you. We will next start with Heather. District 16 has seen growth in various sectors. What are your plans to further enhance economic development in the district? And how will you support small businesses and startups?
Well, as the daughter-in-law of a small business owner here in West Fargo, I think it's important that we continually encourage small businesses. One of the main concerns that my mother-in-law and I have discussed is the issue of small business taxes at the end of the year and how hard that can be for particularly businesses that are really small. I mean, it's just herself doing everything for the location. So having to pay a lot in taxes is really hard when it's just you, yourself, and you. So I want to make sure that we're considering those kinds of things when we're talking to small business owners. But we also need to encourage a lot of programs that help develop leadership and entrepreneurship. And we need to make sure that there's opportunities to put your roots in, build your business here. I think a lot of times people struggle with getting attention for their business, particularly when they're just starting out. And so we need to encourage programs that tell people how to advocate and how to advertise on social media or going to the news, things of that nature.
Thank you. Ben?
Well, I think one of the best things that could happen for small business on the tax structure is ensuring that the correct people are sent to Washington to make sure our tax cuts are extended beyond 2025. That's going to be the biggest harm of small business if that doesn't happen. As far as economic development goes, for the first time in my generation, we have a governor, that's the governor candidate that's running, that on the Republican side, that is not running on bringing jobs to North Dakota. And you say, why is that? And the answer is the jobs aren't the problem. The people to work those jobs are the problem. So we need to develop our workforce. As a small business owner, I see that every day. And I know how we need to develop that talent. And by developing that talent, that will naturally bring more jobs into our economy, and more people will hopefully want to move here. So whatever we can do to support that goal and develop more job training programs is the key. Remember, not everybody has to go to college. Right now, there's a huge void in the trades, and many of them are earning quite a bit more than those that graduate with a college degree.
Thank you. Andrew?
I want to go ahead and piggyback on what Ben was saying. We need to go ahead and get a workforce in the trades. The trades are grossly underpopulated when it comes to the workforce. The other thing about workforce development too is childcare. We need to have affordable childcare so that folks can also get out there in the workforce. Some of the issues that are out there is either his mom or his dad, somebody's working just to pay for childcare. They don't make enough beyond that. We need to find ways to make childcare affordable and make this a great place to come and work, and for our businesses. Thank you.
Thank you. David?
I think one of the main things that I would endorse as far as encourage business is to eliminate and reduce regulations that stifle the business climate. The best way for a business to survive and to flourish in the state is not to have to be competing with federal regulations and even state regulations. And that's a big effort has been done in the last couple sessions on reducing those regulations. I also think that these tax abatements and stuff for the commercial side of things maybe have to be looked at a little bit. Sometimes I feel it might be unfair to the residential owner to have to be picking up the property tax obligations due to some businesses that probably would have been coming here anyway. So that's why I would lean more to making it a favorable climate for that business to survive.
Thank you. Ben, we start with you. Culture wars such as pronoun bills and book bans were priority last session. Do you feel these bills were good use of taxpayers' money? If so, why? If not, did you vote in favor of those bills?
Well, I think any legislator's ideas are worthwhile ideas to consider in Bismarck. Doesn't matter if they come from a Republican or a Democrat, they deserve their day in the sunshine to be debated. I do not believe we had any book ban bills last session. I do believe that we built on a long-standing tradition which was to have the appropriateness of content to be managed. If you've ever been to a movie, there's what? There's a rating, R-rated, PG-13 rated, PG rated, and what was the purpose of that? That was because society believed in decency, and they believed that certain things are only appropriate for people over a certain age. So what we did was we went into the library and basically said, this is the G section, this is the PG section, and you can't have rated R content or worse in the G section just because it's politically expedient. I do not believe that we did anything that was harmful or that the district members of District 16 would disapprove of.
Thank you. Andrew?
Again, you know, we looked at these issues, and we did not have a book ban. At no time was there ever a book ban. Content, yes. And make sure that it's age appropriate for people have access to age appropriate material. We're working on these issues. I know they came through the education side. We talked for in schools, and at no time was it ever a book ban. Thank you.
Thank you. David?
I have to agree, and as I mentioned earlier, we haven't voted on a book ban. This was on placing material that wasn't appropriate for children in another section. And I guess I find it a little maybe concerning that people would want to promote giving our children material that's not probably even fit for adults. When we were looking at these bills in the last session, we were given graphic material on what some of these children's books had content of. And some of this material, I know our local TV stations would not even consent to reading what's in some of them books. And yet, I guess we have people that feel that it's fine. Let's give it to our young children. I serve on the Sexual Abuse Committee, Prevention of, and that's what we deal with every day.
Thank you. Heather?
I don't believe that culture war bills are a good use of taxpayer time, primarily because there's only 80 days maximum allowed for session. You only have 80 days to get things done that make a real impact in people's lives. And you don't have to let your kids pick out certain books at the library. You can go to the librarian at your children's school and say, my child is not allowed to pick out X, Y, and Z books. They'll put a note in the student file, problem solved. You don't have to say that it's not allowed for anyone ever. And while maybe we should re-examine where we sort books from time to time, the answer isn't in taking away people's ability to choose what they do. And I think we need to remember that it's important we're focusing on those fiscal bills, the things that have real, actual impact, and not necessarily things that we can't solve and we're not going to agree on even a decently marginal scale.
Thank you. Andrew, we start with you with this question. Do you have any plans for a bill to assist with child care costs in North Dakota?
None at this time.
Thank you. David?
No, I do not have a bill that I'm considering at this time for childcare. But I think when we were talking about the success and the of our business community, I think if we can instill a good environment for our business, if business wants a particular employee or needs a group of employees, I think the business is fully capable. They're smart people. They'll find ways to provide some child care for their employees. I don't know if it's, for me, the proper thing to be asking the taxpayers to be paying for child care, you know, for those that are out in the workforce. So again, I go back to let's make it a business-friendly state.
Thank you. Heather?
So Senator Clemens says that businesses will find ways to provide that child care for their employees. They could. They're choosing not to already. So the problem is that this falls on a lot of taxpayers who I mean, Representative Koppelman said earlier, or maybe it was Marshall, that there are parents who mom and dad or one or the other have to work because the other one has to try to provide childcare, or they're both working and not making enough to afford childcare and their other bills. So we need to take the opportunity to re-examine what's required of physical spaces that children are in. And I don't mean, go all willy-nilly and risk children's safety. That's not an option either. But there are some requirements that are perhaps too stringent for the size of small daycares. And then we also need to invest in that workforce, in the wages. I worked in childcare. $10 an hour to have kids do kind of horrible things from time to time to each other or to you is not fair, and it's not adequate.
Thank you. Ben?
Well, I think we need to take the tools that we have and direct them in the right place. I think we need to create more providers of childcare before it can become affordable. That's simple supply and demand economics. And in order to do that, we have to look at what does it cost to open a center and what qualifications do you have to work there. I recently toured a center that was opened in Fargo, predominantly with grants from businesses. And those businesses had a priority to bring their employees' kids to that facility, but it was also open to others. They had scholarships for the portion that was paid by those that came. I think that model is much better than a voucher model for childcare, because I don't necessarily believe that all parents want to send their kids to daycare. I think if it's best that one parent can stay home with their kids while the other parent works, even if they switch off, because they're the best caregivers we have. For those that doesn't work for, I think we need to encourage more facilities to open so there's more options and the prices come down.
Thank you. David, we start with you with this question. The last legislative session saw record spending. When asked why spending was so high, some legislators said, quote, because we had the money, unquote. What will you do to be fiscally responsible with taxpayers' money?
I agree that the spending has increased a lot over the 10 years. And I think when the COVID situation happened, there was a large influx of federal money that came in. And of course, you spent it or you sent it back. And so the appetite was for more spending. The sad part of it is that a lot of that spending has not come back down from the COVID days. And now we're looking at a budget that's even higher than the last one. So in relation to this question, I'm seriously considering voting against some of these big agency spending bills. They're going to have to find some ways to cut back on that, because people are frustrated and having a tough time with their property tax, and yet the state now feels like we probably have a free rein to continue our higher spending. So I totally agree with that question that we need to start cutting back on some of this spending, even though the state of North Dakota has lots of money.
Thank you. Heather?
I find it interesting that a Republican-led majority legislature would find ways to spend money just because we, quote, have it available. In essence, the point of having this money is to provide services to protect and take care of our residents and their cities and the ability to function and live. So we don't need to spend money on every single new little trinket or gadget that we could have for our department, but we do need to make sure that we have what we need to get by and to provide the services that we're supposed to be providing. So when we're looking at what could we cut or what should we cut, the problem is that there's only so much and so many people who we can cut from a budget before we run into problems with providing services that are necessary, that are relied upon by a great majority of our population, and that we cannot afford to lose because they'll cause other problems in other areas.
Thank you. Ben?
Well, I think the solution to all spending problems is recognizing what the purpose is. And the purpose of government is to do the things that we can't better do for ourselves. It's not to take care of everybody's every need. It's not to provide everything for everybody just because it seems like a good idea. And it's not to spend it just because we have it. So I think one of the key things we have to do, if you have too much money and you're tempted to spend it, give it back. Drain that account down so that you're not tempted to spend it in the future. Fund the things that are priorities like roads and bridges, things that people can't do on their own. We have that ability as our state. We're blessed with many resources. We have the ability to take the burdens off our taxpayers' property tax and other taxes with this excess funds rather than spending it. And we need to stop the experiment of most things from the Department of Commerce.
Thank you. Andrew?
One of the problems we have in Bismarck is that we're limited to 80 legislative days. And so during the majority of the session, we're dealing with policy issues. When it comes to spending, all those spending bills come to us, to the floor, at the very end of the session. And a lot of times these bills are bloated and they need to be cut down. I was able to look at one of the bills and they wanted to spend $20 million for the Buffalo Park out in Jamestown. The session before, they wanted $5 million, and we killed it then. And then this last session, they jacked it up to $20 million. And I kept going back and forth, and I stood up, I explained what was going on to the session, and I asked everybody to kill the bill, and that's exactly what happened. And that got pulled back out, and it eventually got passed without that $20 million. We need to do more of this.
Thank you. Next question for you, Heather, and we've only got time for a couple more questions, and I'm going to make the last one a quick yes or no type question so we can get to closing statements. How will you work with local schools, technical colleges, and universities to create more opportunities for workforce training and help students transition into high-demand jobs in the region?
Well, I think it's important to remember that the legislature doesn't directly control our institutions of higher education, but I have a degree in student affairs, so people who work in residence life or financial aid, things like that, often have this kind of degree. So I understand what it takes to make a college function. That's like 2/3 of what my classes were about. And so I want to stress that these colleges are often doing everything they can to offer students a positive experience that helps them grow in many ways. But I think there are opportunities to work with them and say, you know, we're willing to maybe help you with this capital project if you're willing to invest in these types of programs, or if you're willing to talk about what it would take to add these programs to your department and how we can work together with them on that, while recognizing that we don't fully control what they do and we only control a portion of their spending.
Thank you. Ben?
Well, I believe ultimately the legislature controls all of their spending. We have delegated setting of tuition and of student fees to the university system. We need to take that authority back. Then we also fund them directly through appropriation. So we do control the money, and with the money goes the policy. And so those schools that are willing to step up and provide that innovative training that we need, that's where we need to spend the money. And if we do that, the university systems will follow suit because they'll follow the money. I believe in terms of what the focus should be, I think the focus should be on things that you do with your hands. That seems to be the things that younger people are not going into, and partially it's because of the 30 or 40-year mantra that if you really want to be something in life, you have to get a 4-year degree. We have to break that systemic pattern, and we need to tell people that they matter even if they don't go to 4-year college. And you know what? Many of those people are earning 6-figure incomes in less than 5 years' time.
Thank you. Andrew?
For several sessions now, we've been trying to get partnerships between businesses and the universities to work out where we need the training and the partnerships, create grants to help kids into certain career fields. We need to continue that partnership with local businesses to find and tag the areas that are what our economy and our businesses actually need, training, and promote those areas.
Thank you. David?
Well, the state has been putting a huge effort towards these vocational centers to help build the degrees other than a 4-year degree, so that the businesses can have access to qualified and skilled workers. Now, the state does provide the money for state school institutions, And I think, as Ben had mentioned, they need to start prioritizing how they're going to be spending their money. Because if they're not going to be using it for some of these issues we've been talking about, then maybe they'll be facing some cuts if that was ever to come. But that's the state's in control of the money. And so we continue on, I think, to work with training workers other than the four-year degree. And of course, the higher education probably isn't going to be real supportive.
Thank you. Again, I want to thank everybody for submitting questions, both online and in person here. There's a whole stack I did not have time to get to. I encourage you all to directly send your questions to the candidates through their Facebook pages or their campaign websites, wherever you may contact them, or just pin them down in the hallway after we're done here. So again, I would ask you to answer this very quickly. What is your position on marijuana 5 that would legalize recreational marijuana use in North Dakota?
Quite simply, as a legislator, I don't tell you how to, as our constituents, how to vote on the measures, because that's your portion of true democracy that we have in North Dakota. The rest of it's a representative Republican or republic where you vote for us. But in this case, I think you should get informed on the measure. I do believe as measures go, this measure is written better than many have been in the past, but vote your conscience.
Thank you. Andrew?
Again, as voters, you need to get educated, look at what it has done in other states that have legalized it, and see what the issues that their other states are having. Get educated. I don't want to sit here and try to tell you how to vote. You need to get educated and learn what the issues that other states are having with the legalization of marijuana.
Thank you. David?
Well, I think the question was asking what or how I felt about this.
Says what is your position?
Right, my position. So I would be opposed to recreational marijuana. A few years ago, we have medical marijuana. And the argument then was, just let us have medical marijuana so we can help those that need it. And so the legislature approved that. Now there's, on the recreational, I think people need to know that states that have had it, some are trying to pull back from that again. A lot of drug traffic coming through the Fargo area comes from Colorado, and which has legalized marijuana. Law enforcement will tell you they do not have ways to detect marijuana in let's say, a driver's system. And I guess if we're going to pass recreational marijuana, what we're doing is probably increasing the risk that something might happen on our highways to us or our children.
Thank you. Heather?
I'm actually a yes on Measure 5. I think it's important that we set regulations on this process, and that's probably kind of funny for people to hear a Democrat say regulations are necessary, yes. But the thing is, if we leave weed, marijuana, whatever you want to call it, open to this sort of secrecy, there's a lot of times that's where we get into issues with it being laced with other things that are more harmful. And as far as the states that have legalized marijuana, they've also typically taken the approach of declassifying other drugs or medications and lowering their felony class or the way that they look at them. And that's what's causing a lot of the other issues, is that they didn't have the ability to handle how that was going to go before they put that measure in place. So it's not the marijuana that's the problem, it's all the other drugs that they maybe legalized or decriminalized alongside of it. But relatively speaking, marijuana has very little negative effect on the system long term. And other than a high that could put you at risk while driving, yes, it's not nearly as addictive as cigarettes and vaping. And I think we need to work on those first.
Thank you. And now we will move to our 2-minute closing statements. And Andrew, you go first.
Thank you. Again, we want to thank the League of Women Voters for putting this on and those that are here this evening. I've been proud to represent the citizens of District 16 for like the last 8 years, and I'm looking forward to the next session. I'm proud of my career, of what we've been able to accomplish in the education and in the energy and natural resources when it comes to making sure that our energy sector is putting out a quality product and making sure that our grid systems are safe and reliable, and that our oil fields are able to produce the oil and natural gas that we so greatly need. We need to continue on the path that we're currently on, and to make things more affordable for our citizens, make sure that our schools are properly funded, and look forward to the future. Thank you.
Thank you. David?
Again, I'd like to thank everyone that was here and for the opportunity. I want to get back to property tax a little bit. I think there might be a misconception sometimes that property tax is levied by the state, and that's not true. This is a local issue. And you have your school boards, you have your county commissioners. They're the people that are spending your money. It's not the state. And now it's like, and I'm not excusing the state on any of their spending either, but I just want to make it clear that it's like the locals haven't maybe handled the money they had, and now we're going to the state to try and bail it out. The state has taken over social services, was a huge spending part of the counties. The state has already bought down over $1.5 billion, and a lot of that money was going back to the schools. When you get your tax statement, you see on there, okay, the amount that the legislature had bought down, and yet your taxes go up. You look at your assessed value. Your assessed value has gone up, not by the state, by the cities. And so you're losing your buying power because your taxes continue to grow despite the $1.5 billion. That's why I believe that we should be addressing our work and reductions in the residential property tax to help out the local people that are, a lot of them are on Social Security. I've had people talk to me and say, I'm falling behind on my taxes. That's the ones we need to help, not make this huge cut into the state that the state's going to have to buy back and then create shortages in some other services. And then I wanted to say that if reelected, I would like to go back to Bismarck and continue to work on protecting our children and reduction in spending.
Thank you. Heather?
Once again, I'm Heather Landine, and I want to thank the League of Women Voters and AARP and Civic West for putting this on tonight. And I want to thank everybody who did show up and maybe who watches online after the fact or watched online with us tonight. But primarily, I want to point out that there is an opportunity here for new leadership, for young and, in my case, female leadership. And I think it's important that we continue to let young people into the space and that we let new voices into spaces where people who are career politicians, like two of the three up here, have stayed in for a long time. And we have an opportunity to have change from people who are willing to hear from you and willing to talk to you. And as far as Phil and Julie not being here tonight, I want to point out on their behalf, they're saving lives. That's why they can't be here. It's not that they chose not to be here. They don't have the luxury of getting to take a day off from being a sonographer and being a firefighter. And in Julie's case, also a single mother of 3 sons. So they don't have the opportunity to be here tonight, but I do. And we're all pretty aligned on things. But if you have questions for all of us, we have a website. It's d16candidates.com. And I do want to point out as well that many people do feel that the legislature from the 2023 session was harmful. And there is an opportunity here to sort of erase some of that harm and that hurt and continue moving forward in a direction that makes this a state that young people don't want to flee from as soon as they graduate college, like many of my classmates and colleagues did, and that makes people want to move here and settle down and raise their families. I'm also from a rural area. I graduated high school in Lemoore, so I've lived in both parts of our state, both rural and metro, and I'm familiar with the challenges in both areas, so I'm very flexible and adept at knowing how to balance those concerns and those issues. But I also just believe in people. I believe in our communities, and I believe in our ability to make North Dakota a place that people want to be and that people love with their whole heart.
Thank you, Ben.
Again, I want to thank our moderator and our very timely timekeeper. I appreciate that, as well as the host for tonight. I wish we had been able to hear from our opponents in this race on where they stand on all these questions. Those questions are going to go unanswered, at least to those of you that are in the TV audience. And that's unfortunate. And they have very noble professions, and I hope that they continue in those professions, and I'd be happy to represent them as their legislator. As it goes to what's important to people at their dinner table in their household, we have a national economy that's in shambles, led by the party of our opponents. That's not what people want. I don't believe you want it. I don't want any more of this, and I've suffered just like you are. But North Dakota has been a bastion of hope. Our state population has grown like never before. Our city population has grown like never before. That's not a state or a city that's driving people away because their policies. That's a state and city that have faith in the party and the individuals that continue to go back out there. We are not career politicians up here. We spend 4 months every 2 years in Bismarck. Now, that's very part-time. And then you know what we have to do? We come back and live under the laws that we pass. We don't pass anything on you that we don't have to live under as well. And so, I always said that the good measurement of somebody's interests is how does it affect them? Well, I don't want to be affected any more negatively than you, and I vote that way. So please please vote to re-elect me in November.
Thank you to all of you. Thanks to our co-sponsors of the AARP of North Dakota and Civic West. Thanks to the City of West Fargo. And may we have a special round of applause for these candidates who are advancing our democracy by willing to give their time and effort to run for these offices. Please go to Vote 411 to get more information about this race and others, and we'll be taking a few minutes before we set up for our next forum.
I'm going to ask the audience to please take your seats so we can begin. Randy, I'm going to do 2-2-2. Thank you. Give them a moment to. Good evening. I want to say thank you to the candidates for joining us for this forum hosted by the League of Women Voters of the Red River Valley, the AARP of North Dakota, and Civic West. My name is Mary Tintus, and I'll be your moderator for this forum. This forum is being streamed live and will be recorded for playback on the City of West Fargo's Community Access channel. It'll also be posted to the League of Women Voters website and our Facebook page. I'd like to thank the City of West Fargo for providing the space and technical assistance for this evening's candidate forum, and to all our volunteers for greeting, collecting questions, and timekeeping. We're grateful for your help. I'd like to just take a moment to point out that the League of Women Voters has vote411.org. We like to direct everyone to that site. Candidates are invited across the state to put their information there. And it's a one-stop information spot for voters to go and learn about their candidates. So the rules for tonight, each candidate in this forum will have 2 minutes for their opening statements. Each will then be allowed 2 minutes to respond to each question, and at the conclusion, we'll have another 2 minutes for closing statements. The timer will give you a reminder if you go over. If you're speaking when the time is up, you can complete your thought. All right, we're going to begin. I'm going to take just a moment to make a couple of comments. I know that from past experience, a lot of voters have said that they don't know how to vote for judge candidates, judicial candidates, because they don't understand necessarily what they do or the scope of their responsibilities. So I would appreciate if you could describe just a little bit about the district that you will represent if you're elected to this position. And I think we'll start the questioning with Dan Gast. Do you prefer Daniel or Dan?
Either one.
Okay. Dan, just tell us a little bit about the judgeship and what qualifies you to be a judge.
This judgeship is to represent Cass County, Trail County, and Steele County, the East Central Judicial District. So it's a tri-county judgeship. We have 11 judges. Judge Irby is retiring, so Ryan and I are going for his spot. I'd like to start out by saying that this isn't like other races. I think everyone here has two great candidates.
Daniel, I'm
Yes.
sorry.
Oh, I gotta press my button.
Yes, sorry.
I'm sorry.
Everyone has two great candidates. I think we're both well qualified for this job. I respect my opponent a lot, and I think he'd do a great job, and I think I would do a great job. That being said, what I try to focus on the things that set us apart. What set us apart is I currently am a judicial referee. That means I work with the judges. I am a judge. I'm the judge of the juvenile court. I'm different from a district court judge, but I'm the judge of the juvenile court. I handle the small claims court and traffic court, along with several other types of hearings. I've done thousands of hearings, presided over thousands of hearings as judge, and I have wide support. I'm also a veteran. I served in the Army and the U.S. Army Intelligence Corps for 4 years out of high school. I'm proud of that service, and I would hope the voters would consider that. And in your comments, you said people don't necessarily know how to vote for judge. Well, I would say trust the experts.
About a year ago, we both put our names in for consideration of appointment for a judge. And there was a survey done of all North Dakota lawyers and judges on our qualifications, and I outscored my opponent in 9 out of 10 categories. So I think those 3 things show that I'm well qualified for this position.
Thank you. Ryan Youngren, your opening statement, please.
Thank you very much. So, thank you very much to the League of Women Voters, Civic West, and AARP for setting this up for both of us. And so, why me? So I have 24 years of experience as an attorney, and out of those 24 years, 22 of them have been in district court. I will tell you throughout this, and I think Dan and I will probably say this back and forth, but I have great reverence for Dan's career and what he does with the juvenile court. If you're looking for a district court expert, you're looking for me. I have prosecuted thousands of cases over the years, civil and criminal. I just completed my 150th trial this week, and I do a lot of the heavy, difficult lifting at the office for the county. If you go back the time that I have been in Cass County, 17 years, and you look at the major cases that have come through our district, my name is on a lot of those in some capacity. I team lead a group of 6 lawyers and 7 staff, and so those are very important things, and for me, it's all about the community. So that's why I'm running for judge.
Okay, thank you. And we'll have the first question directed at you, Ryan. How do you, as a judge, how would you ensure impartiality and integrity in your rulings?
So, impartiality is something that we, and me in particular, bring to the table in spades. That is one of those things that I think we hold in very high regard at the office that I work. I certainly have through my entire career, as I work with all types of folks from all corners of the 3-county area that we have jurisdiction over, and the cases that we deal with. I have shared that with folks first and foremost. For me, there are 3 principles. It's you need to be a good listener, you need to give respect, and you need to be decisive as a judge. As I look back at the judges I respect, those are the 3 things that I look at and say, I would love to emulate those 3 things. And for me, you have to give that respect up front. That is not something you have to earn in a courtroom that I would preside over. It's something that you're given when you walk in the front door. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan, same question, please.
It's a difficult question. It's not, of course, we all try to have integrity and impartiality. When I never set out to become a judge. I was working in the juvenile court for many years, and when my predecessor announced his retirement, people asked me to put my name in for a judge, and I spoke with every person who worked in the court. I spoke with every juvenile court employee, including the secretaries, the court officers, the director. I spoke with my other co-counsel that I worked with. I spoke with opposing counsel who I go against every day. And I spoke with the judge, and everyone said, you should put your name in for this. And I got that job, and I've been presiding over that courtroom. And I remember the first time sitting up there being scared and thinking, who am I to decide what happens in these cases? My cases, I handle juvenile delinquencies. I take children away from parents who are abusive or neglectful. It's a big load. And the truth is, I still ask myself that question every day. Who am I to make this decision? And it's coming from that place of humbleness that I am bound and determined to make the right decision, and that keeps me impartial, and it keeps the. I'm not saying I never make a mistake, but I certainly agree with everything my opponent said. But you just have to stay grounded, and you have to do what you want to do. And sometimes being impartial and having integrity means making decisions you don't really like, but you apply the law, and you do that, and that's what I do. So
Thank you. Next question, we'll start with you, Dion. The Code of Judicial Conduct is often cited as a reason judicial candidates can say very little about their actual views. Do you think this is fair? How can voters learn what you believe, what you stand for, and how that may affect your service as a judge?
It certainly does provide a difficult question for voters. Judges, for the most part, we are separate from the rest of the population. We're not supposed to go to political events. We're not supposed to say what we think. We are very private, and then in this one instance, when we're running for judge, we appear in a candidate form and say what we can. The judicial ethics are very important. I have them here with me. I take them around with me. The truth is, you need to protect that impartiality, going back to the last question, and I don't know that there's a different way to do it. So there is some give and take. Is it fair? I think it is fair. I think you'd rather have a judge deciding things based on the law and based on their application of that law. And it's difficult if we're allowed to say too much, because any question asked here tonight could be a case in front of me tomorrow. So I understand it's frustrating, but I don't know that there's a better way to deal with it.
Thank you. Ryan?
Thank you. You asked about the Code of Judicial Conduct, which I completely support and have read many times working through the different avenues and nooks and crannies of this election. And the idea behind that is really that neutrality. I was on a radio program here some months ago, and they asked me, how in the heck do you run for judge? Because essentially you are handcuffed, and you can't say, I think like this and I vote like that. You can't do those things because of the fact that they may end up in front of your court. What I would look for and what I propone for myself is, first of all, look at someone's career, look at what they've done in their career, look at the cases they've handled, look at where they've worked, and then go, how tied are they to the community? Because quite honestly, you wouldn't do this job. You wouldn't be up here campaigning for a job like this if you didn't care about the community first. It's just not worth it otherwise. And so I think that if you look back for myself at the work I have done on boards in the community, the coaching and the teaching that I have done, the deep roots that I have here, I have spread myself out so that I get to know people and they get to know me. I've been many times at parades and other things now where I've had people come up and shake my hand and say, geez, I'm glad you came by, because we never know who the judicial candidates are and who you should vote for. So that's what I'd be looking for.
Thank you. So, starting with you, Ryan, can you explain your judicial philosophy in plain English?
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that, because gosh only knows where I'd go from there. It was very simple, and I just gave it to you earlier, okay? You have to come in with those three things that I gave you to the bench, and as I have practiced for 24 years, I have said, I look back and I go, the judges that listen, the judges that give respect, and the judges that are decisive. Now, why is that stuff important? Interestingly, as a lawyer, so Dan and I have practiced a long time, and in my 24 years, and I just did that jury trial, finished it yesterday, and I thought to myself, is this my last time practicing law? One of us is going to get it. And I thought to myself, wow, that is really different, because everybody brings these things to you. They bring these different ideas. And first of all, the thing you have to do right out of the gates, once the case is called, is listen. And be a good listener. And when you do that, the only way you're really going to listen to people is if you respect them, okay? If you give that to every single person that comes into your courtroom, and you say, I give that person respect, then you are going to listen to them. The third thing that unfortunately I find not very common in our jurisdiction, but occasionally I do, is when people aren't decisive. And so if you have those three things, that is my judicial philosophy.
Thank you. Dan, your version of plain English judicial philosophy, please.
I guess I don't know that I started with a judicial philosophy, but after being on the bench for years, I don't know if I would call it a philosophy. What I think about is being in court is often the worst day of somebody's life. These people, they don't want to be there, and people react in all different ways. They clam up, they talk too much, they get agitated. My philosophy is I can be a person that helps. Of course I apply the law, and of course I make my ruling, but I can help these people understand why I'm making the ruling, what the law is, maybe give them a direction to go in the future. And I'm talking mostly about the defendants who are probably going to have an adverse ruling against them or some issue. I guess I don't bend over backwards for the state because they're usually there. But, and I don't bend over backwards for anyone. But I find that just talking to these people in plain English, this is why the rule is, this is what the rule is, this is how it applies in this case. So I offer empathy quite often. I know you don't like this, but that's the ruling I have to make. And I find that I've talked to people after the fact, you know, just meet them on the street and people say, thank you, you ruled against me or you did something I didn't like, but I felt like I was listened to. I felt like you helped me get through it. And that's basically what I've been doing my whole career, is help people get through a difficult process, and it's what I continue to do. And I found out that I'm pretty good at it. So I think that I'm worthy of this position.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. The next question is specific to our District 8. What steps, Dan, would you take to improve the efficiency of the court system in District 8 to reduce case backlogs and ensure timely resolution of cases?
People don't know this in public generally, but we do have case time standards. In juvenile court, for instance, most cases are only supposed to go 6 months at the maximum. I think in adult court, they're quite a bit longer. I'm actually on the calendar control committee statewide. We evaluate the standards. We do have a system where every quarter, if I have any cases that are overdue, I have to write why, and that goes to my presiding judge, and he looks at it, and it goes to the Supreme Court, and they look at it. So we have those things in place. One of our big backlogs right now is when somebody needs a mental health evaluation in order to proceed. Sometimes going to the state hospital takes a long time, and they don't necessarily go there, but that's where they get the evaluation. And we are short on evaluator. I think we just hired 2 new ones at the state hospital, but we need more of that type of support. That would help those specific cases that get backlogged. But I think we all in the judiciary work very hard to try to keep those timelines, and if we go over them, we have a good reason. So I don't think that it's too bad right now, and I think we should just keep doing what we're doing.
Okay, thank you. Brian?
Thank you. It is all a matter of degree, and what we have here in our judicial district versus other places, but that is something that certainly, when I first meet with victims or other witnesses and they ask me, they're like, okay, so how long is this going to take? And I go, well, it's probably going to take months, if not up to a year or 2 before we get to court. So what do you do with those circumstances? I think you be prepared, and I think as a judge, you have to be willing to try cases. I think if you don't do that, if you're not willing to do all of your job all of the time, I think that can really slow things down and it can drag things out. I think you also have to hold the parties to timelines and accountability. If you're not willing to do that, then it's going to keep dragging on. We mentioned hear some of the things like, what do we have out there with the mental health issues and how we're handling that. And some of that stuff is just going to take resources, quite frankly. And so that's where, as a judge, you are a neutral in a lot of this, but can you voice your opinion and advocate for the fact that the courts are backlogged on some of this stuff? I have seen some of these things take up to a year before someone can get a mental health evaluation, and that's just wrong. So I would advocate for those things as well and use the position, because really you have a very important community position as a judge, to voice that.
Thank you. And this question kind of builds on what you were both just describing. Would you propose any innovative practices or reforms that would improve the process, such as specialty courts? I know there are drug courts now, but mental health courts, or is there technology advancements that need to be in place, in your opinion, Ryan?
Yeah, thank you. So let me say this, 24 years on this job and handling thousands of cases and 150 trials, I can tell you right now that the major issues that we're dealing with in our community are mental health, are drugs, including fentanyl, and then violent crime. So if we're dealing with those three things, how do we address those better than just, kind of like the Laverne and Shirley assembly line, we're just working through case by case by case and just moving them on down the road. We have recently gotten permission to have a veterans court in our jurisdiction, so that's out there, that's on the horizon and will be very soon. We have the drug courts. They are increasing their capacity right now. I worked with a drug court for a couple of years, and so I know that system very well. I have been at graduations where people who have been shot 6 and 7 times and have multiple felony convictions, have been to prison over and over, have finally gotten themselves clean and seen that happen, and that's really inspiring. I have a terrible situation in my own personal life where one of my son's classmates overdosed on street drugs, what he thought was a Percocet, and it was a fentanyl pill. And his parents found him deceased in his basement, in his bedroom. Very, very sad situation. So those things mean something to me when I talk about the community and how important that stuff is. Is there room in our jurisdiction to do more with domestic violence? Drug possession, domestic violence are the two things that for all of us, they're ubiquitous. They're everywhere. We see that up and down the system. And so I do think that stuff needs to be a focus of the judiciary. And again, another place where I think we need to advocate for more resources so that we're not just moving people through the courtroom as fast as we can.
Would you support family court?
Family court's a very interesting idea, and I'd like to see, so again, being the team leader of the personal crimes division, I can tell you of all the domestic violence cases I see and the danger that comes out of the domestic violence world, if we can do something to address that, I would.
Thank you, Ryan. Dan, same questions for you.
Certainly, I agree with my opponent. We have a couple specialty courts. We have drug court, we have juvenile drug court. I am the person who puts juveniles in juvenile drug court. I also act as an alternate judge for juvenile drug court. And that's a hard program, but if a juvenile can make it through that program, it just makes me so happy. And I tell, we lose juveniles, they get kicked out of that program and they come back and see me and I tell them, at least I hope that we gave you some tools that you can use later when you want to get clean, and now you're gonna have, now we'll figure something else out. Veterans Court is coming. When I put my name in for judge, I said I'm gonna start working on getting a Veterans Court in this jurisdiction, because there was one in Grand Forks, but there's not one here, and there should be one here. There are 11 judges and 2 referees in Fargo in this jurisdiction. I'm a veteran, and Judge Hayden is a veteran. We're the only 2 veterans. I spoke with Judge Cleveland. The truth is Judge Cleveland was already working on a Veterans Court, so I put my full support behind her, and I can't take very much credit, but I was supportive the whole way. Judge Cleveland really made that happen, and I thank her for that. Family court, the nice thing about Cass County is I am the juvenile judge. If a child comes in, they've committed a crime, or they're being taken away from their parents, they see me. And if their brother does it, they see me. And parents come in and they see me. So we have that to some extent in Cass County where you get one judge for families, basically. It'd be nice to have an ICWA court or expanded family court where we're more, and I'm talking with Heather Trainer at the at the Supreme Court to maybe arrange some of those. And I could go on and on about this, but I'm gonna run out of time, so.
Okay, thank you. Well, everybody knows how expensive lawyers are. What are your thoughts on how you might be able to work to ensure that all individuals, regardless of their background or resources, have fair and equitable access to the courts? Starting with you, Dan.
Most of my career, I was a public defender. And I took the cases that I got. I didn't get to pick and choose. And I had people come in and say, hey, if you do an extra good job for me, I'll pay you. Because I could take private cases too. I had my own firm and had a contract to be a public defender. And every single one of these people, I said, look, I'm gonna work 100% on your case. It doesn't matter if you pay me or not. You wanna pay me, you can, but it's not gonna make any difference. And coincidentally, nobody paid me. But we have terrific public defenders. They are in court all the time. They are getting those repetitions. They know what they're doing. They're not miracle workers, you know. We can only do what we can, but everyone has great representation. Where I find the real problem to be is, for example, if you're a single person and you make more than $1,500 a month, you don't qualify for a public defender. But there's no way that you could afford an attorney. So we need to change those numbers and give people a real shot at being able to have an attorney. Yeah, if you can, I guess in my court, I would love it. We've gone to a model where every child gets an attorney, no matter what. Your parents can be millionaires. And that hasn't been an issue. We've been doing that for about 4 or 5 years, I think. Before that, they did have to qualify under their parents. And the more and more representation we get, the better service these people are getting, the more streamlined it actually helps in every single way. So I think that there are some people in the legislature who say it's too expensive, but I know Travis Fink has some ideas. He's the indigent defense director. And I think we could raise those limits and get people represented.
Thank you. Your thoughts on that, Ryan?
Yeah, thank you. So I do interestingly find that a lot of times when people will come around to me as the prosecutor and they will say, what do we think I should do? You know, if they don't have an attorney, and I'll say, first thing, get an attorney. And that's where we should start our conversation. Now, if that doesn't happen, and that doesn't happen sometimes, we recognize the realities of the world and what that costs, and how, you know, people do a cost-benefit analysis sometimes too and go, well, do I really need one here or not? Now, as a judge, how much can you actually do other than to look at the guidelines and then apply the guidelines? Is that I think then you have to go, and I think we do a very good job with that here in our jurisdiction, is you have to go, okay, there are going to be people that are representing themselves. How do I, using those principles I gave you, be a good listener, give respect to them, and then be decisive? We give a lot of deference to people that don't have attorneys in the system. Everyone does. I will count all the judges and everybody that works with folks like that in my business and say that we really do, and we try to help them work through. And I think you have to go back to those principles, because until the legislature gives more money, which they should get, even though we have a great core of public defenders in this jurisdiction, I can say that with some authority because I worked in a different jurisdiction and worked in a big city, downtown in a big city. And we have a great group of public defenders here, very conscientious and very hardworking. But until you can do some of those things, a judge really just has to live by those 3 principles.
Thank you. We'll start with Ryan. How do you see your role as a judge in promoting public safety? And what would be your approach to sentencing and rehabilitation in cases that involve nonviolent offenders?
So, for me, the entire statute book is wide open. If you look again back at my career and go, what has Ryan done in his career? I have cases on the far side where people have gone to prison for life without parole for some heinous crimes that have been committed. And then I will tell you, it looks exactly like a pyramid, because those cases are this many. And then if you go down to the bottom, all the other cases where I've given people a second chance, where I have offered them probation, where I have put them in communication with drug courts and other sources, the resources that can help them, is this many. So it goes from this teeny number to this big number down here. So that's something that we have to do and have to think about. Now, how can you manage that as a judge as you're working through these cases? And I think you have to be mindful of all of those things. And when you're thinking about, okay, what are my sentence options here? I had a judge I used to work in front of in Colorado. That was where I started my career. And he said to me one day off the bench, he goes, you know, Ryan, he said, all my cases are drug cases. My homicides are drug cases. My car thefts are drug cases. My domestic violence cases are drug cases. He's like, they are all drug cases. If you can get down to that core of some of those, with some of your decisions, working with the lawyers, of course, and the parties and what they're willing to do and bring to you, if you can get down to that core, you can prevent them from coming back into your courtroom. I think that is vitally important. The job that we do with drug courts, with veterans court, whatever else we've got here. If you can, you know, it's almost like the child on the beach tossing starfish into the ocean. There's a lot of people out there that are committing crimes and are doing a lot of illegal drugs, but if you can save a few of those and make sure they don't come back in your courtroom, that's a great day.
Thank you. Dan, your response?
Can you read the question again?
Yes. How do you see your role as a judge in promoting public safety, and what is your approach to sentencing and rehabilitation in cases that involve nonviolent offenders?
I'm going to start with my role in sentencing. I have a great luxury in juvenile court. I do oversee juveniles who commit crimes, but there are several prongs that we as judges use for sentencing. There's rehabilitation, there's punishment, there's deterrent. The one that I never consider is punishment. In juvenile court, we never sentence anyone to punish them. It's not something I even consider. We try to get these kids to make better decisions in the future. We try to get them treatment, whether it's mental health treatment or addiction treatment. And wow, it's just really a good way to think about it. That you've got someone in front of you who has committed crimes and needs some change in their life, but it's not my job to punish them. And I think I would have to continue that. Now, even in order for me to hold a juvenile in detention, which we try to do everything we can to not have juveniles in detention. We'd rather have them at home getting some treatment or in a treatment facility. And there's a short list of reasons I can hold a juvenile in detention. One is that they're a danger to the community. And in those violent cases, certainly you have to consider that. In cases where someone is a danger to the community, sentencing does need to be a little more strict. I think all lawyers, I grew up here. I live a mile from the house that I grew up in. I've lived here nearly my whole life. So I want this community to be as safe as anyone else for my kids and their friends and everyone I know. And those are the small amount of cases that we have to be a little more strict on.
Thank you. This question is, I don't think it's meant to be funny, but it strikes me a little funny. Do you consider yourself a politician, Dan? And I'll add to that, how would you balance being an independent judge and an elected official?
Yeah, I don't consider myself a politician. I'm not to go overboard, but I don't enjoy this whole process. I was gonna say I hate it, but I didn't want to be negative. Balancing a job, I mean, the truth is that when you become a district court judge and you run every 6 years, I don't know that anyone has ever run against a sitting judge. It's kind of a respect thing. So it's really only these situations where there's an open seat and we run against each other. But being a judge comes first, and I don't know what I'm doing. You know, we both have yard signs, we both go to the parades, we both try to meet people, and it's hard. So, and there's no political, like, mechanism behind either one of us. You don't have a party to say this is what you're supposed to do, and we're not even supposed to really engage with that. So it's a unique situation. All we can do is come to these types of things. Thank you for putting it on and answer the questions. But yeah, I don't see myself as a politician, and if I were elected, you know, I would still just be a good community member and still go to functions, but I don't think that it's the kind of politic-y thing where you have to always be running.
Thank you. Ryan?
Yes, thank you. So the part of that about being a politician doesn't quite apply except for the fact that you run for office. And so we've worked very hard in the last few months. I've been to 13 parades. We've been to countless pulled pork and pancake feeds, community events. I, for the first time, went to the Aronia Berry Festival in Armenia. So I have to get all those A's right so I can spit that out.
Yeah.
And we've done all of those things, and I'm really proud to do that. I think one of the things that is important about being a judge is you are an important figure in the community, and you are still a community member. You are quite literally a public servant, especially when you're elected to that office. When you're a public servant, you open yourself to other people's interpretations of who you are. And I think if you aren't out there doing those things, if you're not out there teaching at your church school, all things I've done, if you're not out there coaching, serving on boards, doing some of those things. Now, we have the ethical rules that we have to abide by, but if you're not doing all of those kinds of things and volunteering for Boy Scouts and for Love of Dog projects and things that I have done, then again, you're not a member of the community at that point. And we got to make sure that we don't ivory tower ourselves as a judge so that people truly don't know who you are or even really what you do, because you'll do a lot of things as a judge that will impact the community. And first and foremost for me, the judge is being a public servant.
Thank you. Armenia is my hometown, by the way. Just curious,
Good
how
berries.
much did you spend on candy for all these parades?
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah, it was kind of a shock after the first parade.
Far more than I thought I was going to.
This is going to be the last question before we go to closing comments. And we'll start with you, Ryan. What steps will you take to ensure that ethical standards are upheld in your courtroom? And how do you hold yourself accountable to the community and the law?
Yeah. Let me write some notes here about that. Okay, so your ethical standards, I think, just have to be innate in who you are, okay? That has to be something that you bring to the table. You have to have, there's a couple of things that people have commented about me before. And, you know, this running for office is sometimes an uncomfortable thing because you have to talk about yourself. But people have reflected this back to me before. They're like, Ryan, you have a strong constitution and you have a great sense of self. And if you have those couple things, then no matter what goes on in front of you or what they bring to you or who the players are, you're going to have those things. And so for that, for me, when I lay my head down at night and say, was I ethical today? Did I do a good job today? Those are very important things for just me. Now, there was a second part of your question there, and I was writing really fast and missed it.
How do you hold yourself accountable to the community and the law?
Yeah, and I think it gets back to that part that I was just telling you, is that there's a lot of stuff that goes on in the courtroom and in trials, and I think you have to be able to look back at your experience. As a major crimes trial lawyer, which is what I have done over the years, and prosecuted some of the biggest cases in our jurisdiction, such as the Graywind case, the Jupiter Paulson case, a lot of those major cases over the years, depending on how far back you can go, and I have my hands on all those, is you have to be able to look at your reservoir of experience, again, what I'm bringing to the table as a district court candidate, and go, okay, this is what I've seen other people do that I respect. This is what I've seen has worked. This is some of the direction that we've gotten from the Supreme Court and from the law. And so holding yourself accountable means that you have respect and reverence for the rest of those institutions. And so I'm a farm kid. I grew up in a small town, and I recognize how important that is to respect those people as much as the Supreme Court justices.
Thank you. Dan, same question.
Yeah, for me, upholding my ethical standards is just remembering that I'm not necessarily the smartest guy in the room. I'm not necessarily the one who is there to tell everyone what to do. It's being in a place, well, first of all, we both have decades of experience where we've learned the ethical rules and where we've been in situations. So applying all that, but in court, I've been in front of judges, and I know judges who are very, it's my way or the highway type judges. That's not me. I've made mistakes in court. I've made mistakes in my orders, and when they're pointed out, I've got no problem. It doesn't bother me at all to vacate an order and say, and write into my order, I made a mistake. I shouldn't have done this. So let's go back and start over. How do I hold myself accountable? It's just every day you say, I made the decisions that I made, and I hope they're the right ones. And one of the great things about this jurisdiction is the judges, we all have chambers behind those courtrooms. And you can go down the hallway and stop by anyone's office and say, hey, this is what I did, what do you think? And you have a discussion. The judges here are very good about that, very open. We talk a lot. The other referee, his office is 20 feet from mine. I think we probably talk 10 times a day, and we talk about court because we're both love court and we want to do what's right. So there's a lot of that ability to, if you think you made a questionable call, to talk it out. And I think that's a great thing that we do. So we do our best. And that's the Cub Scout motto, do your best. And that's what I always continue to do.
Thank you. Well, this concludes the question and answer portion of the forum. I want to thank you both for participating. Before we move on to the closing remarks, I just would like to say to all of our audience and our listeners that please remember to vote, whether it's early voting or the day of election or by absentee. And remember that voting is not a privilege, it's a right, and it's one that you should protect. And please exercise your right to vote. So we'll begin with the closing remarks. We'll start with Ryan.
All right, thank you very much again to everyone. Thank you to Dan. Thank you to you, Mary, and everyone that's here and listening online. I want to thank again the League of Women Voters, the ARP, and Civic West for everything and setting all of this up. It has actually been a very interesting time for me. Let me say this, that I, with my experience and years behind me, I could don a robe, walk into a courtroom, and try a murder case right now. That's what I bring to the table. I have these thousands of cases that I've handled, criminal and civil. I teach up at the University of North Dakota. I've done that for approximately 15 years. And I think this about my candidacy. If Dan and I had a law firm together, and I call him Dan, he calls me Ryan, we know each other well. And I think it'd have to be Youngren and Gast. I don't know that Gast and Youngren sounds right, but you know. If we had a law firm together and we had a client that walked in the door and had a juvenile problem, I'd call Dan before I would call Ryan. That's in juvenile court. If I had a district court problem, I would call Ryan. I'd say, go down the hall, see Ryan, see what we can figure out. And again, I have great respect and reverence for everything that Dan has done in his career, but I have that body of work behind me, and that's what supports my career. The other thing for me is how important community is. I could go on for a long time and talk about the different places that I have taught. I taught at Davies High School. I have taught again at our church. I have done countless volunteering with the PTA and coaching. I coached both the Davies trap shooting team and many hockey teams. I was a referee for 25 years. I've done all sorts of community type work. I'm currently on 2 boards. I've been on 3 total: the FMCT, Rape and Abuse Crisis Center, Children's Advocacy Center. So I have done a ton of that work as well. My career has been full of representing the interests of those groups and, again, involving myself deeply in the community. And so I bring all of those things to the table, and I ask for your vote on November 5th.
Thank you. Dan?
I also want to thank everyone. I would also like to point out that if anyone's listening and has made it this far, if you're a first-time voter in North Dakota, you don't have to be registered. There are some new voters and stuff who don't realize that, and they miss out on the chance to vote. So make sure you can still vote if you're not registered. Ryan's career is mostly major criminal, and he's great at that. But there's a lot more to being a judge. Half of the job is civil, a huge portion of it is family law. And I do family law. I fill in for the other referee. We do custody issues. I'm the small claims judge. That's like a law school exam. Every week I have 12 sessions of small claims court. So, and I'm there. I presided over a trial on Monday. So I have the experience. I've proven my dedication with my service as a veteran. And I would go back to the survey. The judges and lawyers of North Dakota ranked me higher. Ryan got a high ranking. He's no slouch, but they ranked me higher in 9 out of 10 categories. And they're the ones that know. So I would ask you to vote for me this November.
Thank you to the candidates. Thank you to the audience. Especially thank you to the volunteers tonight. And everyone have a good evening and get out there and vote. Thank you.